All right, guys, we have to talk about once we install Windows, how do we configure this thing? All the options, settings, especially the different versions of operating systems. So let's jump in and take a look at how to configure and keep everything updated. All right, so we're going to take a look at some of the most common features in the Windows environment. So File Explorer or Windows Explorer is how you open different files. You know, the little manila folder that you double click on and then double click on more folders behind that to find the file you're looking for. Now, UAC is User Account Control. That's like a security feature of Windows, and it lets you have privileges or assign limitations and restrictions to standard users. So what do you want people to reach, and what do you not want them to be able to reach? Now, System Restore enables you to have a non-destructive restore point per se. And this isn't for like one or two settings. This is for your entire operating system. So you're able to restore your OS files without affecting any of the applications or your personal files. And this is what rolls it back all the way to factory defaults. So if something goes horribly wrong, you have a system restore option. Now, administrative tools are in the control panel under System and Security. And this is pretty much a way for you to go take a look at computer management, disk cleanup, your events that are happening, what resources you have. So these are diagnostic tools per se, so you can see what's going on in your system. Windows Defender is an anti-spyware software that comes with Windows by default. The firewall tool as well is something that comes with Windows, and the goal is to block unauthorized data and protect your computer from any unauthorized access. Again, with those two, they're great tools, and I'm glad Windows includes them, but I would definitely take a look at some third-party options to go above and beyond what comes with the system for free. Now, the Action and Security Center are utilities that provide information about any currently deployed software on your system, any missing items, updates. There's even some general resources about security threats, and make sure that you have the latest Windows updates. Now, this is pretty much anytime something goes wrong or you get an error, you can go see it in the Action Center and see what's going on. Okay. An event viewer, it has a lot of logs, every event that has happened on your computer. So anytime something significant happens, there's a log that's created, and you can go take a look at all of those events in your event viewer. And this is anything from a program starting, stopping, a security error. Anytime somebody logs into something, all of it's going to be logged there. Now, your control panel is exactly that. It's a panel where you can control pretty much everything on your operating system. You can configure your operating system or some of your hardware from there. You can take a look at different utilities. You have your display and monitor options back there. You have some security settings and configurations. Now, in Windows 8, it's a little bit different in regards to how you get to the control panel because you go there through the charms bar, but you can also click the start menu and go through what they call the desktop, which is a little different. Gadgets are the last one we'll talk about, and the gadget gallery was in Vista and 7, and that's when you could actually display the gadgets or widgets. They're mini applications, and they perform a whole bunch of different tasks, like showing you the time, maybe the CPU usage. You could get stock updates. You might have a little notepad where you could take notes, so it was pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about the different operating systems from Windows that will be on your test and the different features. So we'll start with Vista. This is going to be the oldest OS that's per se featured on your test. This is not necessarily the oldest operating system that you will come into contact with when you're working in IT. Now, Vista was released in 2007, but has definitely been updated a lot of times. But the biggest features it came with was Windows Aero, which again, all the cool graphical features where you could shake Windows and everything else would minimize, live preview from your taskbar, Flip 3D is awesome, and there's a list that goes on and on and on. Also, like we just mentioned, you have the desktop gadgets there. So you're able to have those mini applications on your desktop and have some quick resources to some information that's important to you. Now, Windows 7 had a pretty long list of features. Aero and gadgets we've already talked about, but let's touch base with the fact that this was the first OS that was in widespread distribution, meaning pretty popular, that had a multi-touch device support and BitLocker. Now, multi-touch is pretty straightforward. That means you can use more than one finger on your touchpad. BitLocker is that full disk encryption, which was awesome. Now, let's take a look at the fact that the snap feature is mentioned here. Now, that is an Arrow component, but it wasn't necessarily in Vista. So Windows 7 is where that was introduced, and we'll find more and more Arrow components and features getting released as our operating systems get newer and newer. All right. We talked about the Action Center and the Security Center. Our virtual XP mode was featured here, meaning that you actually got a full-blown version of XP with your Windows 7 purchase, which is awesome. Shadow copy, that's a feature that lets you make sure that files that are used in backup are being copied, i.e. a snapshot of data at any particular time. It's kind of taking a mini image of your computer so that you have those files at the ready when needed. Let's take a look at Windows 8. Now this flipped the script as far as what we were interacting with in our user environment. Our interface changed quite a bit to what they call a Metro UI. You'll hear it called the tiles. So the tiles were introduced with Windows 8, and they were kind of pulled back or reversed in Windows 8.1 because it was just a really drastic change. The start screen is where you use the actual tiles, and you could touch them or use a mouse, and you could also use your keyboard to get access to different applications. Now, the applications were the normal traditional Windows style, meaning not a lot changed there. It's just how you got to them was a little bit different. So we had the Windows Store that was per se not introduced with Windows 8, but it got much more popular because they kind of forced you to go there to get apps. It's their Google Play or Apple Store, but you could actually do that on a laptop or PC as well and go get the applications you needed. And the Charms bar was definitely new. This was available on the right side of the screen, and from there you could use a search feature, you could have quick access to devices like printers or share content, you had shortcuts to share stuff through email or social media, and you could access all of your configuration settings over there. The one thing that I did like that got introduced with Windows 8 and is still available in Windows 10 is having that multi-monitor taskbar. So if you have 2 or more monitors, you used to have to go back to whatever your primary monitor was to get to your start screen and all of your taskbar items. But now, whenever you have 2 or more monitors, every monitor will have the taskbar on it. So you can get to things pretty quickly. All right, so in Vista and 7, there were some differences to what you had in what we call your task manager. That's the pop-up when you hit Control-Alt-Delete and you need to go kill a program per se that's freezing up your computer. So the normal one and the one that you're probably used to is what you've seen in Vista and 7, which means you have 5 different tabs and they'll tell you about what's going on your PC. Applications are all the things that are currently running. Processes are everything that's running as far as your CPU and memory usage in the computer. Your performance is going to give your stats for both of those. Networking is going to show you what network you're connected to and give you some current connection and utilization statistics. And the user tab was added in Vista kind of later in the game, but it shows you all the users that are currently logged into the system, and you can connect to different sessions from there. All right, so what changed in 8? Well, we still have the Processes tab, which is cool, but you have a little bit more information on there as far as the CPU utilization. It shows you how much percentage each application is using. You've got some memory, disk, and network information right there on the Processes tab. Performance is very much the same. You're going to see the current CPU, RAM, disk, and network usage statistics. Now your app history was added, and that's going to actually tell you the CPU time, or the amount of time spent processing instructions for that application, the amount of network activity used by that application, and any tile updates that you have in regards to that app. You have a startup tab there, which allows you to you can actually go through and see all the applications that run at startup. And this is what we accomplish by using the MS config tool, which we haven't really touched on yet, but we will definitely go into detail on. So MS config is really all your startup applications, but they made it much easier to access this list and actually disable those apps if you wanted to from the startup tab in your task manager in Windows 8. Users, same thing, all the users that are currently logged in. Now, details is definitely a new tab as well. And this is for all the processes that are running on your computer. The following list per se is listed in your task manager. What we call a PID or process ID, you have the status, meaning is it running, is it frozen, is it on its way out, whatever the process of that application is. The username, so who opened that process or who owns the process, the CPU usage and percentage, the memory usage, as well as a short description to help you know what the process even is. And of course, we also have the services tab, which is pretty much the duplicate of anything that's found in the control panel of services. So it's just a different way of accessing it, or a quicker way per se. So a little bit different as far as the features available in the Windows 8 environment of the Task Manager in comparison to Vista and 7. Now your control panel is going to be pretty similar across all three. And this is a graphical interface that gives you access to pretty much every utility that you can configure in your Windows operating system. It also has the hardware configurations here as well. So taking a look at this, you'll see different categories. And I actually want to have you look right here. You see where this says category? Now we talked about category versus classic view in the past, and that's where you actually go through and change that setting so that it'll look a little different when you have it up on your screen. All right, so there are different tabs in your control panel, but there are also different tabs in your internet options. Now remember, in your testing environment, when they ask you about changes in the internet or your browser, they are not talking about Chrome, Safari, or Firefox. They are specifically talking about Internet Explorer. So if you haven't done so yet, I want you to spend some time in your Internet Options of IE. You just right-click on it and go to Internet Options, and you'll see all these tabs there. You need to familiarize yourself with these because you'll probably come across some questions in real life and on your tests when it comes to Internet Explorer. Now in your General tab, you're going to have the home page setting, which means you can choose what opens by default when you open the browser. Your history, you can tell it how many days that you want to keep record of pages. The colors of background and text, what font you want to use, what the preferred English, preferred language, whether it's English, Spanish, or something else. And has some accessibility tools for visual or hearing impaired users. Now in the security tab, you're going to have different groups of websites known as zones, and you can configure your zone settings, meaning that some people can get to it and some people can't. Now privacy is a level of access that third-party cookies have to your browser itself. So you can go in there and customize how much access you really want to give people to keep the things that you place into your computer, just as far as the data. Now, content has a lot of different settings or configurations that you can do back there related to content ratings of websites, meaning it's pretty much a security certificate and autocomplete function and has all those settings in there, which means it could fall under security or privacy, but it has its own tab. And that's why I really want you to spend some time in your preferences and internet options, because even though it seems common sense to maybe choose one answer over another or find one piece of information in one tab versus another, it's very specific where you're going to find some of these things. So take the time and explore. All right, connections determines how IE is going to use the computer's network to connect to the internet. Programs are going to really determine which programs IE will launch by default when you choose a link. So if you select an email, like you click on someone's email, is it going to open Outlook? Are you going to open a new tab? And go into your Yahoo or your Gmail, whatever that may be. And then you have an advanced tab, which has a lot of different settings behind as far as how your browser itself is going to handle hyperlinks, scripts, if you want things underlined or not, whether videos can be automatically played or played at all. So take a look, familiarize yourself with those, and get to know what's back there. All right, your display control panel is going to help you configure all the display properties for your system. And that includes how big or small your icons are and your screen resolution, among other things. A user account control panel is going to have all the credentials and important information about each user that has access to your system. Now, the most important thing back here is the fact that you can define the rights and privileges assigned to every user, meaning you can control what kind of actions they can perform on the system. Now, there's a lot of stuff here, and I would definitely recommend reviewing who has access to your physical computer. Now, have you ever right-clicked on a folder and taken a look at the preferences back there? Well, this is what this would look like. And again, if you've never done it, go do it. Now, please don't change any of those preferences, but take a look at what options are here. You've got 3 tabs: General, View, and Search. And this is all your configuration settings for how files and folders are displayed and how they're accessed. Now your system control panel is going to have a lot of stuff back there. This is the utility that lets you view and configure settings for your entire system. So you can see what Windows edition you're on, what manufacturer and model of computer you're on. You're going to get CPU and RAM information. All kinds of stuff is going to be back there. So please do not change any of these settings, but you should be aware of where you find the type of information that's held in each of these control panels. Now, a firewall is any device or program that blocks unauthorized data transmissions and helps protect your computer from unauthorized access. The Windows firewall comes with Windows, but you should be taking a look at what you can do to defend your computer even above and beyond what they're providing. All right, power options are pretty straightforward. Now, we've had hibernate or sleep, which are actually a little bit different, and I did not know that until I took an A+ course myself. So in hibernate mode, the computer stores whatever is currently in memory on the hard disk and shuts down other than that. So when the computer comes out of hibernation, it actually returns to the exact state it was in when you put it in hibernation. Now, when you sleep or put something into standby, you actually use, or I should say the user determines how much time of inactivity a computer is going to go through before it goes to sleep. And the computer just does this to conserve energy, and it cuts off power to the parts of the machine that aren't necessarily needing to function at that time. Now, this does not include RAM. RAM is going to stay up and running the whole time so that you're not going to lose anything that's stored there. However, depending on which OS you have, it's going to have a different name. So sleep mode is for Vista 7, Windows Server 2008, and any of your Apple operating systems. But you'll actually see the word suspend if you're using a Linux or Unix system. All right, so let's jump into the middle, which is power plans. Now, these are built-in power configurations that you can actually manage. So if your laptop is plugged in, you may allow the screen to be brighter and it take longer to go to sleep. But let's say it's not plugged in, you might want the screen by default to run a little bit darker to conserve energy and only stay awake for 5 minutes instead of 10 of inactivity. So you can go in and configure those and play with those, and it's actually a pretty cool thing. All right, programs and features enables you to turn Windows features on or off. You can see all the updates, you can uninstall programs. In Windows 8, it only really applies to traditional Windows applications, not the apps that you get in the Windows Store. So take note that it's a little bit different in Windows 8. Now, home group is where you're able to create a network between all of your home computers. Now, if you're going to use this in a corporate setting, you have work group and domains. So this is really for smaller at home. You create a peer-to-peer network, and you can allow people to share files, printers, and even stream media through all the network devices. So make sure if you set up a home group that you trust the devices and users in your network segment. In your devices and printers, this is really a utility that has all the stuff that's plugged in a single location. So you can manage your external devices, even if they're external drives, mice and keyboards, printers, whatever it may be. So depending on how your manufacturer wrote the drivers and the software for the device, you might be able to completely manage the devices from the device and printers menu. If not, you might have to go into a separate menu to troubleshoot those devices. Now, your sound control panel is pretty straightforward, but I find myself there pretty often when I'm changing where I want things to play back. Meaning, I need to select which speakers that are currently connected are going to be the ones that play any sound that I have coming out of my computer. In recording, you're going to set the default recording device and configure any settings and properties for that. In your sounds, you're going to tell it for any Windows events and programs what sound schemes or what set of noises you want it to make when a program event happens. And your communications is specifically for automatically adjusting the volume of different Windows event sounds. So if you want something to be only at 50% of whatever the max volume is, or you just want to mute something completely, well, you can do that for certain notifications. You do have a troubleshooting control panel that is used to assist with any type of common issues per se. So if something goes wrong in a program, device, maybe there's just a network issue, then it's a normal occurring instance, which means Windows has seen it a million times before. Your troubleshooting tab is the best place to start and just do some surface level poking to see how you can get this fixed. Now your device manager is going to display all the devices that are currently installed on the computer, and this is where you can modify pretty much any of the properties for all of these devices. How to get there, this is going to be in your control panel, in System and Security, and then to your device manager. In Windows 8, however, you can actually go directly there from the Charms bar. So network and sharing is pretty much a simple place where you have all your admin privileges to see what's going on your network and what resources are shared. This could be file or printer sharing. It could be password protected as far as on your files and your printer resources, so you could enable or disable that there. Lots of things in regards to whatever's connected to your network can be seen in the Network and Sharing Center. Now you've seen your command prompt, so again, this should be pretty familiar by now. And if it's not, spend a little bit more time in your command prompt. So you have a million different things that you could put into your command line, and you've seen a few of them already. I want to take a look at the fact that we have a few more that we're going to add to the list of what you should know about. So here's your additional list. Task kill is how you kill a task. So if you want to end something, you can end it by name or the process ID. Boot wreck. So if there's any type of startup repair that needs to happen and you can't do it through your system recovery options, then you can run this thing called boot wreck. And it's pretty much to manually troubleshoot whatever the issue may be. It literally writes a new boot sector compatible with your installed OS to a system partition. So it gives you a new space to start troubleshooting. Shutdown is, by essence, exactly that. You're going to shut the computer down. You can also actually type in log off if you're just looking to log off. Your task list is going to give you a full list of all the applications and services that are currently running on your local computer. Now, if you are remoting into a computer and you have permission to do it, you can actually display the task list of the computer you're remoting into as well. Disk part is going to be used to create or manage, per se, the different drives, including your partitions and volumes on any given disk. SFC is System File Checker. So this is going to go take a look at all the Windows files and see if they're corrupted and make its best attempt to restore them. Check disk, or CHK-DSK, is literally just going to say your disk is good or there's some corrupted parts of it. Now, if you're going to attempt to fix it, you do need to add the /F option so that you give it permission to attempt to fix any errors. GP stands for group policy. So GP update is for group policy. And that's going to take a look at your Active Directory, what group policy you have in place, and then do an update for all of those users. GP results is your group policy result. So any types of settings or changes that have been made and you just want to see them per user or per computer, you can use this as long as you're on the actual computer that you're looking for those group policy rules. And exit is one of the two ways to close your command prompt. So you can either type in exit and hit enter, or you can just hit the red X in the corner. All right, so you have a lot of administrative tools, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. All an administrative tool is a folder that has other tools in it that help quote unquote advanced users or admins to help manage the system itself. So not scary stuff, but knowing again where to look for things is really important. So computer management itself is the primary admin tool, and you just manage and configure Windows computers and get to other things from there. This is going to have your event viewer, your performance monitor, your defrag tools, disk management, all that overlying or umbrella term type stuff. Local users and groups is to help create or manage local users and groups on the system. Your security policy is going to be able, or your local security policy, I should say, is where you view and edit the security settings for the local computer. Now, please hear when I say local over and over, because that means anything that you change in any of these menus is only for the computer you're changing it on. That does not make it group policy. That does not make it a network-wide change. That only makes it a change for the computer right in front of you. All right. Performance Monitor is a tool that monitors the state of services or processes, any resources on your system. It can track a whole bunch of stuff and have statistics about the operation of different objects per se on the system. So this is software or hardware components. System config is used to ID and manage issues that could be causing system issues or startup problems. Task scheduler is pretty awesome. You can create and manage certain system tasks automatically. So I personally have a disk cleanup and disk defrag task scheduler happen pretty much in the middle of my sleep, but it happens every week and I don't even have to think about doing it. Component services is something that you probably haven't touched and honestly may not ever in your career. Just depends on which way you go. But it's the graphical user interface that developers and admins can use to configure these things called COMs, or component object models. So a COM is a component object model, and there are different components to that. So if you're not familiar with it, don't touch it. It's not going to be on your test. All right. Data sources, or how to change things between databases, uses this thing called open database connectivity, which means you can actually move data between different databases on your system. Print management's pretty straightforward. You can go see and manage all the printers and the print servers installed on your network. Your memory diagnostic tool is to check the RAM, and your firewall and advanced security settings are just that, your firewall and any of the settings for security that you have. All right, a few more utilities that I want you to be familiar with, but I'd say there's only about 3 that are super, super important here at this point in your career. So in Vista and 7, you can use the search bar, and then in 8, you can do the desktop, and you can just start typing from the charms bar. But anyways, you can use these things called runline utilities, and you can get to a lot of different system components from here. So the 3 that I want to kind of just focus on, and the first one is going to be msconfig. It's probably the most important. And this is going to open your system config utility, and primarily what I want you to remember, take note of, is that your startup applications are going to be managed from msconfig. So if you have an application that starts up every time your computer starts up and you don't want it to anymore, well, just go to msconfig and disable it. Pretty straightforward. You should know Explorer and Notepad. Now these are pretty simple, but there's a really good way for you to start interfacing with your runline utilities if you have no idea what these are. That just means hit the start key, type in the word Notepad, and hit enter. Notepad opens. Do the same thing with Explorer, and you'll see that your files are going to open. So it's just practice stuff so you can be familiar with it. Go ahead and go into msconfig and take a look at what's running. You might actually learn a few things in there. All right, so in-place upgrades. We're going to talk a lot about different types of upgrades. So what happens when you want to get a bigger, better version of Microsoft? Well, there's a few different ways to go about this. In place is the process of installing a newer version of an OS without removing the one that's already there. So you're going to go from what's in place to whatever's next. Now, this is a pretty safe way to go about this, but I would recommend backing up your data. Now, there's tools available that we'll talk about within Microsoft or within Windows that'll help you move your data from one OS to another, but backing it up is always the safest way. All right, what I need you to take a look at in life overall, and you will definitely come across this if you're an implementation tech or a network engineer of some kind. If you want to upgrade from one operating system to another, you need to make sure that it's an open path, meaning you cannot go from Windows 3.1 to Windows 10 without any issues, right? You have to make sure that it's in the upgrade path. So these are some examples that are on your screen. From Windows 7, you can go to any level of Windows 8 or 8.1. From Windows 8, you can go to any higher level of 8 or to Windows 8.1. So there's certain upgrade paths that you can take. Now remember I said that there's some tools that you can use to help you through this process. And the easiest one to use is the Upgrade Advisor or Upgrade Assistant. And that's really going to tell you all the options you have and what is compatible, meaning can I upgrade from A to B and what do I need to change, if anything. And of course, those built-in tools I was talking about, the USMT stands for the User State Migration Tool. And this is a command line utility, but all it's going to do is copy all of your files and settings from one Windows system to another. And that's going to include all of your user account files and folders, Windows settings, emails. The goal is for it to make a carbon copy of what you have going on in one system and be able to push it into another system without any data loss. Now, Easy Transfer, again, is built in, but it's Vista and above only, and it helps do the same thing, transfer files, data, and settings from one PC to another. However, I would highly recommend using backup utilities per se before trusting these tools, because when you use an in-place upgrade, if I can talk today, there have definitely been times where we've come across issues that, well, some data is lost. So back up your data regularly, but make sure to make a solid full backup before you go through and use any of the tools that are available. You can use the Upgrade Advisor, like I said. It's a really cool tool to let you know what is available for you as far as upgrade, and that way you're not just guessing. You can make a systematically educated decision on if your upgrade is even possible. All right, so you have made it through not only installing, but now configuring the Windows environment, which is really important. So what I want you to do now is take a look at some of those tools that I talked about, especially if you've never used them before, because you've got to be familiar with your own system. Folder properties, Internet Explorer properties and options, and your MS config. All right, I will see you again soon.